All right. Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to start off with a quick, by the way, what an act to follow we have. Wow.
I know
Wow.
it takes a lot, you know.
The bar may be slightly lower, but we're going to give it our best shot. I mean, that was excellent. Very inspiring. Excellent. All right. Audience participation. Before we start, this is a panel dedicated to AI, artificial intelligence, something that has been on our minds, especially in the last few months. Quick show of hands. How many of you have used an app to create an AI-generated picture of yourself, which you then posted to social media? Anyone? A few of you. All right. Another quick show of hands. How many of you have dabbled with ChatGPT? More hands. Okay, yay for text. Okay, great. So we're going to be talking about some of these things. Before we jump into it, I'd love to give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do during your day job before we talk about science fiction.
Well, I have an easy introduction since Jessica Jensen, our awesome CMO, just spoke. And so I lead our global brand marketing and creative team at Indeed. For anyone who just walked in, I will repeat, our mission is to help all people get jobs. And so we are very fortunate in that we've got a great company. Our mission is literally core to everything we do. Therefore, our product truly is the best at helping match the right candidates to the right employer. And then I get the fortunate job of being able to tell the world about that across a lot of different countries to reach our 300 million or so job seekers that come to our site every single month. So I have a great job. I love my job. It's super fun.
Thank you.
And I'm not just saying that because my boss and half my company's here, really.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Tatiana, Holifield, Arthur. I am the Vice President of Digital Content and Audience Engagement for Sirius XM and Pandora brands. My team oversees social media, digital content, CRM, owned, organic, earned, paid, you name it, we do it. We do it all.
Thanks, Tatiana.
Good afternoon, everybody. Michael Liu. I'm the head of innovation for Dentsu Media, Carat here in the U.S. I actually get to play around with this stuff every day. So luckily, I get to experiment around new technologies. How does it impact our brand's business as well as the media funnel and the overall marketing efforts? So I'm excited to talk about AI and the impact of the potential of it.
All right, wonderful. And just a little bit of information about myself. My name is David Armano. I lead marketing for a technology company that is deep in AI called Soul Machines. Essentially, our product is autonomously animated digital people. The last few weeks I've spent actually launching a digital person that is connected to GPT-3, so you can talk to this digital person about anything in the world, which is pretty incredible. So super excited that we have the opportunity to talk about this topic. So Tatiana, I want to start with you. And continuing the theme of ChatGPT, one of the first things I did was I asked ChatGPT to write a country western song in the style of Trent Reznor. I'm dating myself there. And it was a great industrial western song. When it comes to the fields of entertainment and how we've traditionally done things, artists have written songs, AI now can mimic any voice. You can sample a voice and you can produce a whole song using AI. So when it comes to the music industry and entertainment industry, what are you seeing? What are some of the opportunities, but also some of the concerns?
There's so many things that are happening with AI within the audio and entertainment industry. I'm going to take it in two parts. So first, from the marketing side of things, my team, for example, is using ChatGPT for email marketing, for newsletters, for reaching our consumers on social media through content, like you were saying. And there's so many avenues that we're thinking about it. I recently challenged my team to personalize our blogs based on people's preferences for the music content that they want to hear and learn about and discover by using ChatGPT. And I found that one of the challenges that we are going to, I think, see with writing and journalism in particular is who owns that content. And as a journalist, you have to stop to think about like, okay, does it then belong to the computer? Does it belong to the person who put the code in, for it? Like, where does the ownership lie is one thing I'm thinking about. And then the other side, going back to your first question about the music and entertainment side of it, if anyone here can Google Pandora and Cheez-Its, the crackers, Cheez-Its.
Big fan.
There you go.
I love them too.
I like Cheez-Its too.
Yes.
I'll admit it.
So we actually have an audio alchemist who works at our company. Actually, he's speaking on Monday at South by Southwest. His name is Steve Keller. You all should check out his session. But he used an insight study working along with one of our agencies where using the AI derived data, they were able to determine that cheese is aged better when listening to hip hop music. And as a result of listening to hip hop music, the cheese will taste better and smell better. So again, we're driving culture.
Yeah. Never would have thought of that.
Yes, and so that is the power of how AI is just fueling everything that we do in this world. And there's so much more that's going to come out of that. So I'm very, very intrigued and excited about where this industry is headed.
I mean, I've never heard that story. That's incredible. I like to say, we used to say there's an app for that. I like to say there's an AI for that. And now there's even, when it comes to aging cheese, there's algorithms, hip-hop algorithms that can be used. Michael, I want to thank you, Tatiana. That's amazing. Michael, you sit in an interesting area. So you're sort of at this, you're on the cutting edge of trying out new technologies. You have exposure to brands, right? Because you work for a services industry and brands are your clients. And then you're also in a creative and media-driven industry where you're making things, right? And so generative AI, the definition of generative AI is that it generates, it makes things. For example, some of you may have seen that someone came up with a mashup of Patagonia and IKEA came together, and then within seconds using text prompts, they visualized this thing that actually looked like a real product, right? Like a Patagonia design couch in front of mountains. So what are some of the implications when it comes to both brands, but also the creative side of the agencies?
It's a pretty big implication there, because I think AI has potential to kind of affect every piece of the business. So it's not just the brand and marketing side, it's the analytics, the media, it's the sales, it's e-com, it's UX, UI, content creation. How do you scale out content? For example, you can use ChatGPT or any other text prompting service to come up with copy, translate it into like 50 different languages in a few seconds, and then put that into a video generation to have an avatar speak it in a local language. And so you can start to take and scale out human skill sets and put it out for many things. So you can do that for media, you can do it for your own channels. And I think it's really important now why generative AI is, I guess, the soup du jour of our industry, is because we're in like this creative renaissance of new forms of technology allowing us to create in different ways. If you have nieces, nephews, children, younger siblings, everybody wants to become a creator. I've got my 2 nephews who want YouTube pages and a Roblox channel, and my mom she already has a blog and a YouTube channel. I don't watch her, so it's weird. She's just like, every day she just posts about what she does, which is she lives in the suburbs, so it's like really nothing, but it's cute. But everybody is a creator, and every platform and technology out there is enabling us and empowering us to just create something. And so I like this sort of concept of renaissance, or a creative renaissance, where every society and era of humanity is really driven by its art scene, and it's a reflection of what that society is going through at that time. And so if we are to rely on AI to generate the art and the content moving forward to the next 5, 10, 15 plus years, how will our, I guess, landscape of art reflect of how we are today? if it's not actually real or actually done by a person. But there's a lot of arguments there on, the input of the data as well, and us as just kind of wielding a different paintbrush just by using text. But I think it's an important thing, as you're mentioning brand building and marketing, that we've moved away from the reliance of like a technical field and a technical background to understand AI to now anybody can just utilize it and harness the power for any sort of creative endeavor. I myself cannot draw anything better than a stick figure, but you can create some amazing original IP, images, video, music, just by sort of having a thought and bringing it to life. So again, the impact is just so powerful across the business landscape that we're testing a lot of things at Dentsu and in Carat specifically on how to harness this for our brands and our clients themselves.
Yeah, and you made so many good points, Michael. One of the many good points that you made that stood out to me was you used the phrase scaling human efforts, which I think is actually super accurate. And that makes me think about the world of work, right? Scaling human, because there's a fine line between scaling human efforts and also taking my job, right? And which is sort of the narrative that we hear about. Personally, I think it's oversimplistic and preying on our emotions as humans. But Jennifer, my question to you is, given that you're working in an industry that literally is the world of work, this must be coming up, in conversations. What jobs will AI take? So, what have you been seeing and hearing, and what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, well, I would agree with you. I think there's a lot of fear in AI, and I guess my first piece of advice would be not to fear it, to embrace it, and that's kind of the way we think about it. And I saw our CEO Chris Himes speak just earlier today about this, and he made some really great points that I think are also worth repeating. And the way we think about it as a company is that sure, there are some jobs that will go away. However, there will be a lot of new jobs that are created. And I think that is the way we have to think about it, and how skills of today will transfer to those new jobs. The other example that he shared, which I can talk about it as the past CMO of Radio Shack, was this circular that floated around for a while that showed how products like cassette players went away. Does anybody miss those? Does anyone remember who they are? I should probably start there. Thank you. A few of you. Big alarm clocks, bulky alarm clocks. The iPhone took the place of all of that, right? And it's a much better solution. It's made life better for a lot of us, and it's created a whole lot of jobs, like, the app creators, the service providers. And so that's the same way we think about this, is that it is going to, of course, create change, and there's going to be a lot more jobs from it, and you just have to embrace it, is the way we're thinking about it and talking about it today.
Yeah.
So,
Can I add on that as well?
Related to that, yeah, go ahead.
I think we both have
Jump in,
go-
please.
Go.
Both of you can jump in.
So, as I'm sure many companies here have probably recently gone through organizational changes, or maybe your companies have gone through layoffs or things like that, I took some new responsibility on, and I said to one of my colleagues, I need to update my resume. And I'm like, if you know a good executive resume writer, let me know. He texts me back, ChatGPT. I was like, oh crap, yeah, you're right. So instead of, looking at it as, these things are going to take my job or whatever, like you said, embrace it and use it as an opportunity to think about the functionality and how it can actually help and change the landscape in a better way.
I totally agree, and I think the impact that it will have on, I guess, not only the individual skill set of somebody who's looking for a new job, or the skill set of an organization and the structure of an organization. Who owns that? Like, if your company wants to scale out or have a competitive advantage, how do you utilize this to have that competitive advantage? And I firmly believe that any company or individual who knows how to harness the power is going to have that kind of competitive edge than those who don't. So kind of rejecting it I don't think that's the right approach. Obviously, somebody from the innovation side is going to think that, but I think embracing it and experimenting with it, understanding how you can scale out human feedback or human capability is so important. But right now, if we think of today, we use data, metrics, optimization of all of our campaigns. Everything's digitized. Right now, it's a non-negotiable to do that. But 15 years ago, having data and making decisions off of data was like really unheard of and not scalable. I think we're at that point right now with AI of right now it would be a competitive edge if you can utilize it properly. But in the next 10, 15 years, it'll be a non-negotiable that you actually have to know how to use it properly to make your business thrive and compete on the same landscape of everybody else.
I think I'm just going to add on to that, add on to my add-on.
I love it. Please do. I love how you're all feeding off each other. This is what a panel should be.
Well, look, I'm no AI expert, and I think I said that when we talked about this panel, but taking my own advice, I'm embracing it and trying to learn how to use it, as is my team. And I think now is the time. And ChatGPT, a lot of you raised your hands, is actually quite easy to experiment with. And my creative team, we were having this conversation the other day, and there were parts of the team that were a little more fearful to jump in. And we talked about the ones that are going to do well are those that embrace it. And it really can take some of those mundane tasks, and you can use your creativity better to like plus up that work. And so that's really the way we're thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, this space is so dynamic. Just today, they announced that within the next couple of weeks, there'll be GPT-4. So if you read a lot of the headlines, the issues of Bing's going off the rails, those things, some of those things will be resolved with GPT-4. Let's talk about ethics a bit. And not just the will AI take my job. There's an ethics part of that as well. I like how we've landed on this. You really need to sort of work differently and learn to work with AI. I think that makes a lot of sense. But what about the people that are writing the code for AI? Tatiana, I have an inkling that the people who write the algorithms, they don't look like you. A lot of them don't, right? And so there is inherent biases in everything that we do. So what do we need to be thinking about when these algorithms or programs begin to sound, talk, feel like human beings, but bring with them a set of biases that may not be reflective of the diversity that exists in the world, the true diversity that exists in the world?
Yeah, I think no matter what, you can never remove that human touch as the last factor of approval on anything going out, especially as it relates to your brand. And so, I challenge my team to make sure that we are as diverse and inclusive as our audiences. And the same thing will have to happen when the machines learn the algorithms. And if I publish a piece of content to our blog or our newsletter, and all of a sudden the blog says written by ChatGPT, and there's AAVE blasted all over this blog, don't think I won't get the backlash of audiences feeling like we're not authentic, and why is this machine using AAVE to come across to various audiences and so forth. So, I think there's still going to need to be that human touch that continues to ensure that your brand is authentically displayed, that you're connecting with your audience in a way that's genuine, and that you're fact-checking at the end of the day.
That's great. What I'm hearing is, there's flaws in the human input, and so you need humans to manage those flaws. Essentially, you can't just rely on the technology, as smart as it seems, as much as it gives the perception that it's thinking, because it's not truly thinking. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to probably hear this 50 times this week, and AI is only as good as the input and the data that it's being fed, and the hands that are coding it, and the human feedback that's, I guess, refining it. So it's extremely important. And also, there's many other models like ChatGPT, and OpenAI is just one. There's a gazillion other ones out there that are more open, that might be trained differently. We're working on some projects that are putting a layer on top of these existing models to ensure that we have data sets, content that are as inclusive and diverse as the audience that we have, to make sure that it's a second gut check before anything gets spit out. So there are ways around it, but it's definitely an issue, because bias is a huge thing within this industry specifically, as well as the ethics of how do you acquire that data and how it's being trained. There's a lot of lawsuits out there already of these companies that are trained on data that wasn't theirs. And so, I'm sure going to have a lot of fun with legal the next couple of years to kind of dissect all of this.
So Michael, I just want to build on that a little bit more. So you're in the type of role where brands come to company like Dentsu, and you're an expert in a certain area, and I'm assuming they come with questions, especially in the last few months. There's so many questions around AI. What are you hearing from brands when they come to you? What are they asking about, given all the advancements in AI in the past few months?
Oh, first and foremost, not claim to be an expert in anything. This space is so fast and changes so much. I would be a fool to say so. But thank you. And I think it's just more so just having a lens and having time to focus on some of these aspects that our clients might not have time to focus on it because they're building a brand right on their end. So what we're hearing is across the board. How do I generate content? How do I localize content? How do I create assets, right, as the output? And then also, how do I do things on the internal side of augmenting our workflow, becoming more efficient, scaling out humans, right? Like that's what we're talking about. And I don't think we're going to replace jobs. It's just going to enhance what we do and do it in a different way. So our clients are taking those two approaches of how do we make better output, and then how do we do better internal things and processes.
That's actually really insightful. Creation and efficiency, right? Like two sides, two very different things, and two sides of maybe a similar coin. I wanted to give you an opportunity because you're about to jump in.
Well, I was just completely agreeing with what you guys were saying, how you have to add the human element in and not just rely on the algorithms. But I was just going to add, from a hiring perspective, it's very similar to that. One is like really looking at skills-based hiring is important, and we have some assessments and things like that, making sure you're getting the right skill set. But then the human aspect is making sure you have a diverse set of candidates, a diverse set of people on your interview panel. So I just wanted to add the human element is so important. You can't let the computer do everything for you.
All right. I wanted to give the audience, this is a great panel. You all have very distinct backgrounds, different perspectives. So I want to be able to open it up to the audience. But before I do that, anything else? Any burning thoughts that you had related to this that you wanted to just get out there?
I really just want to touch a little bit more about the IP issues. And I think, as people are starting to think about privacy, data, security, intellectual property, rights, ownership, things like that, there is such a great opportunity for us to all really rally around this and learn as much as possible. I would love to dabble in this space. And as you talk about like brands coming to his agency and saying, oh, I want to get into this. Yeah, it's great that you may want to get into it, but not every brand has to jump on the next trend at all times. So first and foremost, know that. But also know what your rights are and know what your risk tolerance is. So when I was ready to propose ChatGPT to my team to test and learn, I had to go to legal. And I had to say, can we do this? Is this okay? And of course they were like, no, first thing, right? And I was like, but let me show you how we're gonna do it, And so there's a lot of that's going to continue to come up. And I think we're all learning and figuring it out together. But if anyone is maybe making a career switch, now might be the time to learn more about the legal aspects of the intellectual property or ownership rights or things like that as it relates to all of this AI technology and how this machine learning is going to continue to read consumer behaviors and spit that back out.
Well said. And in addition to the IP sort of complexities, I love that you brought up risk tolerance. So when we connected one of our digital people to GPT-3, which then she could talk about almost everything, we have, being a startup, we have a high tolerance for risk, and we just put a disclaimer out there. But I was talking to a huge global automotive brand last night, and all they could think about were guardrails. What can you put in place to control, if we're going to use this new technology, to control what's said, because anything that's on the internet essentially can be tapped. So I'm really glad you brought up the risk tolerance, because it does take some of that, and it's going to take a lot of human effort to put these guardrails in place. And it can be done, but it's actually a pretty manual process.
I actually think at a certain point, though, everything will start to look the same. Your opening question to the audience was how many people use the face thing to, change their image. And at a certain point, everyone's Instagram looked the same because everyone had like the same, we had this look and that look. And I think about that as it relates to content. You talked about music. If we all start using AI to write songs, if producers start using AI to write beat, is it just they're now going to switch one little key word in the algorithm that now makes it sound a little bit different, but it's the same thing?
That's happening with TikTok now with the latest filter. They have a filter now that you can't even tell is a filter, really. I mean, unless it's you. And you have, yeah. So, all right, I want to open it up to the audience. Thank you so much, all three of you. But I'm sure we'll get some good questions. Thank you.
All right, I'm sure there's a ton of questions on this one. Here we go.
Hi, thanks so much. Tatiana, nice to see you. Michael as well. I think one of the things, though, that's a big concern with all this AI is authenticity. And consumers are looking for authentic relationships with brands. How do you be careful of what I really define as like a human-machine loop, utilizing a chat GPT or all these other products out there to make sure that it still is authentic? You can still have that that human touch, but at the end of the day, brands or consumers really want that authenticity when they're relating with their brands.
I'm going to touch on something that Michael mentioned is I personally feel like we should use it, at least initially, to complement our marketing efforts and not for the very start of it. And so if we can still have that human element, but then use it to scale the content that we're doing at a faster, more accelerated rate, then we still allow ourselves to have a little bit of authenticity. So that was my thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. You use it for inspiration. Use it for, again, you can ask it for copy 50 different ways, and you can pick and choose what you want out of that. Also, I don't think maybe in the next, again, 5, 10, 15 years, however long it takes, to cross that point where people don't even know it's AI, right? So it's trained to think like how we're supposed to think, right? That's what we're trying to get to, as scary as it sounds. But people don't need to know it's AI. You can take that equation out of it. People just want to get the content perhaps or hear about something they want to read. But I think we'll get to the point if we start to train it more on being more empathetic or understanding, then you'll have what the output would be like how the brand would talk in general if you just had a team of copywriters. So it's no different from that, just further down the line.
Jennifer, you want to add to that?
I agree.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why, just jump in there.
Come on.
I see it in the same way, and that is the way my creative team, we've talked about that a lot too, and again, goes back to adding the human element and the touch. We've also talked about, should you be more transparent when you've used it, in places. So don't have all the answers yet, but as a brand, we always talk about the importance of being human. So yes, what does that mean when you're using AI to create some of your content? But I think it is just thinking of it as a tool that you're using for your base, and then you add your voice and your humanity and the empathy to that.
Yeah, and even just 3 years ago when GPT-3 released, it was drastically more noticeable that it was just a robot typing to you versus today. So it'll continue. When 4 comes out, it'll be a lot better too.
Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Anyone else? Yep.
Hi, my name is Brian Chapp with Tech Recipes. I was just wondering if you guys have ever heard of the term prompt coding, and if you believe that that's going to be like a thing or like a role in the future.
Great question. It also goes by prompt engineering. I've actually called it prompt creativity, but basically it's using text as a way, instead of a graphic user interface or something, you're using descriptors and building on them, right? Like you use a chat GPT.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important. You can, if you've played with it, you can prompt the AI to do a certain thing, but if you put a word before something else or weight it in a completely different way, or put a parenthesis in front of it or put a dash in front of it, it'll have a completely different output. So at this point, at least, it's going to be important for people to understand how the machine takes instructions to be able to give you the output that you want to have more control versus it just having creativity. So maybe that will go away as things get more mass reaching and acceptable, but I think right now it's important to have someone who understands how to prompt properly to have more control over what the output is.
I think it's going to be the skill for the 21st century. Absolutely. I mean, we're at the phase right now with AI where, like in the early Web 2.0 days, for those of you who remember, there were just companies springing up and web applications everywhere, and that's happening now. But eventually, it will be basically what I like to call an intelligent tech stack, which is just AI embedded into the entire tech stack that organizations, and it's already starting to happen. Microsoft is already working on it, so you're just going to see Adobe. Adobe will have prompt-based functionality in across the Adobe suite, the entire Creative Suite. That will happen in the next year to two tops.
I mean, if you just build a macro in Excel, you don't have to actually write the code, but back then you had to. So now it's just a UX thing that in the future will happen.
The killer code now is English.
Great.
All right, and any other questions? We've got one more over here.
Yeah,
Great.
hi. Jeff Alderman from Ad Media. A question for you. Really, obviously, AI is great for kind of building things initially, but talk to me about kind of the future state of like continuing enhancements down the road, right? As far as proactively alerting of when to manage or when to enhance for new releases. So it actually is doing the work down the road.
I don't understand.
All right, repeat the last part of that question. None of us quite got it.
Yeah.
Maybe a slight rephrasing.
Yep,
Think of it as a prompt. Treat your question like an AI prompt. And if you need to build on the prompt and refine it, you can do that.
So once AI has created the output, right, it's going to change, or it should be enhanced down the road at some point, right, to make whatever you created better. So how can you actually use that, again, in the initial creation, and then apply AI for future learnings down the road as well? So again, the prompt would be build, but then also how do I enhance in a future state? Is it that intelligent yet?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, so you can utilize it to get an output today, and then maybe down the road you want to use that output and enhance it because right now it's a finished product, you can't really edit it. There are tools you can actually take images or output, videos, images, audio, and put it back in, and then give it control instructions to alter it as well. So that can be done, but it's just not as sophisticated at this point. I hope I answered your question.
And just to build on that, I think if I had to make predictions right now, it's really like a two-way street or a one-way street, whatever that saying is. Yeah, like, you know, and like Michael was saying, it's garbage in, garbage out. But I think down the road, it will become more of a 360 experience. So you will be able to edit. It'll probably be more voice automated rather than just text-based. I'm sure there will be capabilities to connect to certain other things. Everything that's just going to make our lives a lot easier and simpler, but also at the same time, more risks, more lack of privacy, and probably more lack of diversity, inclusion, and renting the culture even more.
Yeah, it's sort of our role of us up here and everybody here as brand innovators, but to make sure that we're directing this technology in the right way and utilizing it the right way and giving it the right feedback to be used in an equitable way. One of those big things also that I think we touched upon a little bit, which is attribution of contributors of the data. And we already know that so many people are, upset that their images or content is being utilized without their permission. So we need to find a way to give people attribution for those contributions if they're feeding the systems that we're using and making money off of.
On that note, I'll just add, just as brand marketers, another thing that my team's been thinking about is what are our brand guidelines around this? Like, for example, we're here to help people get jobs. We would never prompt to create an image based on an artist or a director that we could actually hire. That's probably not the right thing to do for our brand. And so I think, thinking about that, and then as an industry, what are our guidelines that we're agreeing as it relates to how we're going to use it? I mean, there's a lot still to be solved there, but I think it's an important thing.
Jennifer, I'm really glad that you brought up policy. It reminds me of the early days of social media, which became so disruptive. Like every company then had to create policy for social media. And the same's happening now. Will happen with generative AI. Absolutely, you have to have now policy. Things like deep fakes are really big issues, and as consumers of content, we have to be vigilant. One more? Okay, one more question. We have time for one more.
Yeah, thank you. Bill Fergus, Tremor International. And I kind of want to build on what you guys had said. Like, Michael, you touched on it. My question was already formulated, but we talk a lot about outputs of AI, right? But the outputs of AI are based on inputs. The inputs come from a lot of people in this room and the work that is going on by brands and influencers and content that's created. How do you, as brand leaders, think about the inputs in AI and then the outputs that come of that? And how do you stay one step ahead of that in this world of continuous innovation and continuous like data, but also knowing like AI is always like it's not real time yet, right? It's even ChatGPT is like 12 months out. So how do you like think about that, like balance the two things of that? I'd love to hear your guys' perspective.
Yeah, it's extremely important because right now we're evaluating a lot of projects within our organization as well as with our clients on, is it okay for us to work with this because we don't know the source data, right? So there's a lot of hard conversations we're having with legal that are putting the kibosh on some of the projects that we think are so cool, but we can't do it because there's so much inherent risk. And I know everybody here was talking about risk. I'm glad you brought up the input data aspect because I think that's a fun topic to think about. We're moving from, I guess, 2017 to today of the cookie apocalypse of do not track, right, as a consumer. But then media publications in the future will be like, do not crawl my website. So I think they're going to start getting the brunt end of the privacy conversation now where they're like, I don't want AI to actually look at my data because they're going to use it for something else. And so do not track to do not crawl, I think it's going to be a interesting foray in the coming years of how input is going to be feeding these systems, whether it's these closed systems or open-ended, open source systems.
All right, I have one more question. So you guys are talking about everything from the brand side, Michael, how you're dealing with it with clients on the agency side. Quick question from the vendor side. We did something interesting internally. We wanted to see what our team could come up with, product marketing, engineering. We did kind of an indoor hackathon where we divided our team into 6 teams. And we said, you guys take our product portfolio, take some concepts, and you have to build something new that incorporates AI or ChatGPT into it. And then they were presenting it to me, our global CEO, our president. And we said, you know what, if something cool comes out of this, amazing. Plus, 4 out of the 6 concepts that they came back with, we thought were amazing. We're like, we need to actually try to go to market with this. So the question is, from a vendor standpoint and a partner standpoint, have you guys had any of your vendors or partners come to you with something cool and unique that you guys are evaluating at this point?
Yeah, so we have social agencies of record, creative agencies that we use. We have one that's currently based in the UK, and they just 2 weeks ago pitched a concept. I don't know if I should talk about it.
You don't have to talk about the specifics. Yeah,
it's a storytelling concept that allows us to really scale how much content we put out and the type of content we put out at a much faster rate. And I'm very intrigued by it. And I really want to dive into it, but also, as you know, the landscape we're in, budgets are extremely tight. Everything has to have an ROI. And so I'm looking at it in a way of one, if budget is being cut and labor is being cut, is it really the most effective use of my dollars? And then 2, can I start small with the test and learn pool where I can get enough of a base to say, okay, there's something here, and I can really scale upon that with some measurable results. Cool. So that's how I'm thinking about it.
I'll just make a quick comment. Be careful, y'all. Be careful putting your ideas back into platforms like ChatGPT 3 or ChatGPT because a lot of these platforms can own that information to feed their model, and then perhaps when someone asks for that same question, that idea might come back up in some more form or fashion. So you have to make sure you're using the right model, that the data is siloed, and maybe it's localized and not pushed out somewhere else. So just be careful because there's a lot of instances where people are uploading code and they're like, hey, that's our proprietary code. Why are you sharing it, right?
Yeah.
I love that example that you gave. I think it illustrates that when you put these tools in the hands of people that know what they're doing, I'm not surprised that you got great results back because you're working with a group of professionals. Your chat GPT doesn't make someone a writer, but it can make a writer better.
Yeah.
And that's the key when you actually combine AI. And I think that's been a theme with this, right? Is like, and that the loop was mentioned, and like the role that humans play in the loop. Tatiana, you hit that point as well. So I think that's been a reoccurring theme.
Great. Well, Jennifer, Tatiana, Michael, David, amazing job. That was awesome.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. You're great.